Hello, everybody, and welcome to On the Flank episode number 44. I'm one of your hosts, John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick. Say hello, Joe.
Hey everybody.
And Joe, we had a pretty good weekend. It was filled with exciting matches, especially that first day, last Thursday. That was June 27th. Because we got a heck of a match between the Hangzhou Spark and the Los Angeles Valiant, and the San Francisco Shock once again got upset later that day. But let's start Hangzhou Spark, Los Angeles Valiant, because... Oh wait, never mind. I thought that was my match to rewatch, but it is a match to rewatch because it's a great one, Joe.
Oh yeah. This is sort of interesting. They've had the match of the week every week in stage 3, and it seems like rather than the first one on Sunday, it's always been something on Thursday. Has always been
Yeah.
just a super good match.
Oh yeah, and the match of the week has been a 4-0 every time.
It's
No
true.
joke. So that's a curse to talk about later. Although I do think I do think all of the matchups have been sort of reasonably 4-0s in my opinion. The teams, usually a team playing it is either like the NYXL or the Titans or someone who can easily 4-0 anyone in the league. So it makes sense to me usually. But yeah, let's talk Hangzhou Spark, Los Angeles Valiant. Because these two teams are super hot right now, so we all knew that this game was going to be a really good one. Apparently, Joe, the Hangzhou Spark a little bit hotter than the Valiant. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, there was a article they put out, the weekly grab bag, so it came out a couple days ago, I think, talking about particularly this stage, and even as we're getting like into the second half of the stage, like the meta is still changing, and seeing lots of Sombra Ana. You know, like last week we talked a lot about the Valiants playing Kariv and Shax. A lot of the time on those, I guess the other way around, Shax and Kariv on those two heroes. Um, but yeah, this match again, you're going all the way to 5 maps and being able to uh, the Spark were actually able to come out on top of that. Yeah, with a 2-0 on Oasis, back and forth all the way through the series. I mean, it was some really good play. But yeah, I think like if I had to categorize Hangzhou like as a team, they've sort of stuck under my radar. I think for most of this season, it's fair to say. I mean, they're still good. You know, it's just they're the kind of good team that like you don't notice sometimes. But this is definitely you know, over a Valiant squad that has been, you know, I mean they're making their first stage playoffs of the season after what 0-7 stage 1. I mean it's a super remarkable Valiant team. But yeah, to get this win, that's uh, super good for Hangzhou, and I think they're probably also making playoffs. Yeah, they're sitting at 3 right now in the stage record. So
Yeah. Both these teams, fantastic recent performances from both these teams, and this was a close one too. You can't deny that one. But the Hangzhou Spark are just on a tear, and they are sort of flying under a bunch of people's radars, and I think it's just because I mean, they're getting wins against all these teams like the Valiants, like Seoul Dynasty, but they still haven't been able to beat the Shock. They still haven't been able to beat the Titans, and we haven't seen them play NYXL yet. I don't think. I'm going through their schedule right now. No, I think they play them in Stage 4 probably. Yeah, Stage 4, Week 3. So they're fourth right now in the overall standings at 14-7. So they're in a really good position to make top 6 right now, especially with how good they're looking. But I do want in this stage playoffs, I do want to see them play and be able to beat the Titans and Shock. They did just play Titans this stage. I would like to see in the stage playoffs again because they're improving every match and their synergy is it's really coming together here towards the end of the season, despite a rough start and they're finally cashing in on those scrim bucks from the preseason that everyone said this team was the best team. Uh, they just gotta beat the teams ahead of them.
Yeah. And it's
That's
looking like
that's all they
stage
do.
four is going to be similarly good for them too. I mean, like you said, they're playing New York, the Gladiators in Shanghai, other top teams in there, but also teams like Atlanta and Guangzhou.
God, they're playing Shanghai at the Kit Kat rivalry weekend, and
It's true.
right next door to me. And I'm just so salty lately that I'm not going to be able to attend this amazing thing. But there is another amazing esports event that I must attend. So,
Even the name
God,
is cool. The
yeah,
Kit Kat Rivalry Weekend.
yeah. It's weird how every picture is of the Santa Monica Pier because Santa Monica is nowhere close to where this event is. So I'm always weirded out about. They're like, yeah, it's like L.A. the Santa Monica Pier. And it's like, no, it's downtown LA, right next to the Staples Center. It's like an hour drive on a weekday. So, yeah, but I'm very upset that I'm not going to be there. Um, maybe they'll just push the LCS finals a week back. They'll delay it because they can't compete with this Kit Kat rivalry weekend and all the amazing matchups.
There you go.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, both these teams, Spark and Valiant, they went on later in the week to 4-0. Valiant's was probably a little more impressive than Spark. Spark 4-0'd the Mayhem, while Valiant 4-0'd the London Spitfire. And another fantastic performance by them, especially towards the end. I mean, it was a super close match at the beginning. I'm just transitioning into this match now because I liked this match as well. Uh, because Nepal was super close, went to three maps, and then 4-3 on Volskaya. But then Los Angeles Valiant defense just locked down, and London wasn't able to get a single point on Watch Point or Hollywood. So Valiant impressing again. But Joe, I have a question about the London Spitfire because they didn't take a single map this entire weekend, and that was against the Shock and the Valiant. So I'm just wondering, Joe, because this is obviously the defending champion here. They're currently ninth in the standings at 12-9. There have been points where they've looked like they should be a top team, and there have been other stages where they just can't win, especially against these top teams. What do they need to push them over the edge right now, Joe?
Yeah, London's sort of interesting. I think they're one of those teams that can really thrive when they're allowed to innovate. I mean, we saw, I guess it must have been like stage two, maybe early stage two, um, or maybe stage one, that they brought in like guard on the Sombra, and they were doing lots of really good work with Sombra Goats. It had a pretty decent winning streak um, going through those several weeks. But then now, as it's becoming more and more, commonplace, it's almost like they're getting beaten to a certain extent at their own game. In some of these summer matchups, like for example against the Valiant. But yeah, so I wonder if, for example, we'll talk about this later, but when we get into two potentially for stage four, that if London can be one of the teams, oh, even talking about the meta change at the end of season one, going into the playoffs, and London being one of the teams that is able to sort of direct the flow of the meta and know what they want to do and know what they're good at and execute that well before some other teams can do the same thing. I think that's where some of their strengths are. But now that um, you know teams like um, you know the Valiant or New York are sort of catching up to um, these same type of like composition looks. I wonder if that's they're starting to fall behind a little bit.
Yeah, I mean I think they're super excited for the 2-2 lock, Joe. I mean, once again, a huge meta shift in stage four. This is the same exact thing that happened last year. So and stage four, their hardest match is against the Titans, and then the Outlaws, and then the Fuel. I mean, they face the Defiant, the Charge, the Mayhem, and the Atlanta Reign. So they have a much easier stage 4 compared to stage 3, where they faced NYXL twice, San Francisco Shock, and the LA Valiant. And they're now eliminated from stage playoffs. They went 3-4, obviously, so not the best stage for them. But next stage, 2-2-2 lock, and a fairly easy schedule. If you're a London fan, you should be very excited, because they could absolutely peak here at the end and go on a nice little run. And then go into the playoffs and maybe do the same exact thing they did last year, despite only finishing 5th, ending up being the best team at the end of it all. So
That would be hilarious.
yeah, I wonder. All the fans asked for it, Joe. They wanted it, and they might get it.
Yeah.
Um, they asked for this 2-2-2 lock. To be fair, all the fans are very upset that this is happening after most of the season has already gone through. But we'll talk about that more later. Let's talk San Francisco Shock Chengdu Hunters, which is my game to rewatch, because this was a fantastic 5-map match where the Chengdu Hunters ended up getting the victory in a very close Oasis tiebreaker map there at the end. Really enjoyed watching that one. Um, I watched on Reddit, there was a clip of Custa going back and watching a huge point on Eichenwald, which helped Chengdu win that match, where Yveltal had a huge boop on the San Francisco Shock supports up on the top on the second point there, to get them into EMP range and win that fight, which is crazy. I highly recommend you go back and watch that. This is what the replay viewer is great for, Joe. Seeing plays like that. But yeah, Chengdu ended up coming up top here despite a lackluster. I was very scared in map 4 when Chengdu was unable to do anything on offense on Dorado, but they ended up winning on Oasis. Joe, San Francisco Shock. I I was about to say they struggled this stage, but they did go 5-2. Oh, so it's hard to say that. But comparatively, they struggled this stage, Joe. Just unable to sort of catch up with this new Sombra meta against some other teams. My question is, they're defending stage 2 champs. Looking at how they performed this stage, do you even consider them favorites for the stage 3 championship here, Joe?
That's a good question. I mean, we're looking at some of the teams that'll be in it. I mean, Vancouver, Hangzhou, Seoul, Valiant, even the Outlaws have now made, or I've now clinched after week 4 the stage playoffs. But it's actually the last stage playoff of the season. But I think they definitely can be. They can be the reasonably a favorite for the stage playoffs. That's not shocking necessarily to call that prediction. I mean, close loss to Chengdu, close loss to Houston, which I suppose the Houston one is more surprising, uh, but yeah, it's this team. They've had off weeks. That's the thing. That it's not certainly near as frequent as other teams. They've been pretty consistent where they can be. But yeah, I think they've definitely got a good chance. A good chance in these playoffs. I mean, they're starting sort of near the middle of the bracket. It looks like near the top of the 5-2 teams maybe. But yeah, I think they're definitely not. Put it this way, they're definitely not very much weaker, I think, than any of the other teams that are in these playoffs. That if anything, it's just their competition. I think the stage is a bit stronger.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm happy to see San Francisco Shock falling to these teams. I don't want to see another Titans Shock rematch. I know everyone's yearning for it, Joe. They want it again, right? But no, let's switch it up. Let's switch it up here. Let's get two different teams in here, and I think it could happen. NYXL is looking really good this stage. Hangzhou Spark, of course, like we mentioned earlier, we got Valiant on the rise. I mean, I think any of these teams could pull off a crazy upset and find themselves in that Stage 3 championship. And like you said, this is the last stage playoffs of the season, so this will be exciting to watch. Um, but yeah, San Francisco Shock a little bit on the struggle bus comparatively. I mean, they had a perfect stage last stage, so you can't live up to that twice, I guess. But yeah, they're fine. They're the San Francisco Shock. They have insane talent with the best coach in the league. So in the end, they'll probably be fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's move. I mean, Friday was a bunch of 4 Overwatch, and 3-0 Overwatch, with Outlaws beating Justice, Gladiators beating Defiant. Defiance struggled, Joe. If we could briefly talk about Defiant, because I think it's notable how many roster moves they've made lately, um, with now Mangachu joining, and Logic's joining, which are two fan favorites that I believe everybody is happy to see in the Overwatch League. Um, and that started Mangachu and Logic's both. I think Logic's played against Houston, but Mangachu was here for both of them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this was their first week here, but they also added gods, and they've moved a bunch of their other players around. So they've been making a lot of roster changes lately, and so far it hasn't been so good for them, Joe. They haven't had too great of a stage here, going 0-5. They have yet to win this stage. They will be in Atlanta this week, so they could possibly redeem themselves here. But is it just do you think you could chalk this one up to just new players and need some synergy before they play, or were the moves legitimately bad? What do you think, Joe?
It's interesting. Like last week, I was talking about that I really like the Los Angeles Valiant of Shaxx and Fact Fiction, and Kareev. I forget what combination of players I mentioned, but this stage, with this particular roster, they're looking really solid. And granted, it's been relatively recently that Toronto's made these moves. In fact, they've got them listed here on this week's news. But I am liking a little bit more the Toronto of Logix and Mangachu, and Gods saw lots of playtime this week as well. Um, that again, this show hasn't been terribly high on Toronto through our history, and they're still we can see in their stage record that they're still not quite really a super competitive team at this point. But I think it is notable uh, these kinds of roster moves they're making. I mean, they're one of very few teams moving away from a Korean roster. I mean, it started the season as an all Korean roster, and now their starting six is their starting six has only got two Koreans, I think, basically. But yeah, and lots of these losses for Toronto have been relatively close or against teams that are really hot. I mean, a possible exception being like Guangzhou in week 3, uh, Paris in week 1. But it's I don't know. Like I said, we're usually really down on Toronto. I think there's relatively less of a chance to do that, or relatively less reason to do that now with some of these signings. And I think Toronto Atlanta next week is going to be really really exciting match. I think because Atlanta is also well, I say this because Atlanta is also doing terrible um, this stage, but um, yeah, I don't know. I think they definitely need the time to get used to some of these new players that they've got. So that's going to take some time, but uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that matchup's going to be exciting too, just because they both. I mean, they both have had some pretty good peaks. Toronto Defiant went 5-2 in stage one, and Atlanta Reign has had some insane upsets. And both of them have found their way to like the top eight in the overall standings at some point. So, unfortunately, that's nowhere close to where they are now. But
Yeah.
they started off the season pretty nice, both teams. So I think they both been through their roster changes. They both would really like that win, especially Atlanta and in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Toronto. I mean, just going over a complete makeover in the middle of the season is never. It's never gonna be easy. Sometimes, especially when you were doing so well before, and now, and you just Toronto just started like to fall off, and then they were like, it seemed like sort of a panic move, in my opinion. Like they were like, oh, we got to switch everything around because things aren't working. But they did have some retirements. They had Asher and Stellar retire in the middle of the season, which is never fun to try to deal with that. And they had to pick up I'm 37 because of it. And in my opinion, he's not. I mean, Logix and Mangachu are both way better than I'm 37 in my opinion. So just overall, they've really had to make some moves here, and it hasn't been too easy. And then they ended up, of course, trading Envy to the Shanghai Dragons as well. Um, so they've been all over the place.
And it is sort of a point you made. I don't know if you like were intending to make this, but sort of the implication from what you're saying. I totally agree. You know, Toronto has to be careful not to be the next Florida. You know, just to throw out your entire roster and get a bunch of new people when it's not working, and hope you're gonna start winning matches. I mean, hopefully it's done with a little bit more thought than that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Florida, though, Joe, they got a big upset against Houston, so you can't be smack talking them, all right? Um, they did get 4-0 by Hangzhou Spark this week, though. We'll see if they can compete in Atlanta against NYXL, though, with their new roster. I'm interested to see. I almost, somewhere deep in my soul, just hopes that the Florida Mayhem have made a good choice this time around and their roster does some crazy stuff. Because I feel so sad for that team because they have no successes whatsoever. Uh, like they definitely have the worst combined record in franchise history for
Oh
the
yeah.
Overwatch League. Pretty upsetting. 2-17 this year. Good job, guys. Um, but yeah, let's move on to Saturday because we had two other fantastic games, and there's one that I think you would like people to rewatch, Joe. That was the first game of the day.
It's true.
Dallas, New York.
Yeah, yeah, Dallas, New York. And that match, notably, the part of the reason I put this on the list is we saw the 2019 debut of Timo himself,
Mm-hmm.
the hit scan god, the whatever break jail something something whatever. But yes, Taimu did come in and play the first two maps, and Dallas looked really good on the first two maps of this series. And then he came out for whatever reason, and oh wait, no, I guess I thought maybe maybe I was thinking about something different. He came out for map four. Um, but yeah, so played the first three maps then of that series, and then New York came back to reverse sweep him. So exciting because it's a reverse sweep, exciting because it's New York Dallas, and in general they tend to play good Overwatch.
Yeah.
Exciting because we saw three maps of Taimu. Um, yeah, it was a cool series for sure.
Yeah.
Oh
They
yeah,
wanted to.
and so then also then my week MVP. Even though they did lose, um, is going to be Taimu here for Dallas because it's good to see him back.
Yeah, great to see him back, and he did fantastic. I mean, I was surprised. I was surprised they took him out map four for sure. I think a lot of people agree they should have kept him in because they wanted to bring AKM in for Gibraltar, which makes sense. But I think a lot of people on Reddit really would like him in over Zachary, who has been who has just been targeted as the worst player in the league as of late by Dallas Fuel fans on Reddit. Um, which is kind of funny to me. Um, Funny because I don't know. I For some reason I like seeing Dallas fans implode in general. Because it's kind of hilarious. Because unlike any other fan, I feel like they do this. They go out and attack people on their team, sort of, which is funny to me, even though it's kind of mean. Like, imagine being Zach and going through all this stuff, and everyone thinks you're the worst player on this team by far. Uh, that'd be pretty sad. Do I think he's the worst player on this team? I don't think he's too good. But yeah, I think Taimu proved that he probably Time is probably super excited for that 2-2-2 lock. I'll tell you what, because I think he should be back in the starting lineup for sure. He's doing super well. But yeah, Dallas Fuel overall, I'd never know what to say about the Dallas Fuel. Um, they've got tons of fans. They've got two coaches that are in the spotlight a lot because people know who they are.
It's true.
But overall, I think they're an average team. So
Trying to
they could. I think they just need to find sort of the exactly right roster, and and they could be pushed over the edge. I mean, they almost beat NYXL here.
It's true. Trying to think, did Arrow get U.S. head coach again? I think he
Yeah,
did.
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Um,
That's another thing.
yeah, everyone was upset about that one. Um, but we'll see. Maybe he can. It's all about picking the right players. We'll see. We'll see what he could do. Obviously, I came on the show. I said Deep is obviously the best American coach in the Overwatch League and Overwatch in general. But apparently, the top. I can't. Is it only the top 150 that voted? I can't remember.
Something
Apparently, the
like
top
that. Yeah.
players disagreed with me. They said, "No, Arrow's better." I mean, have you seen his results? We lose every year in the round of 16. He is a god. Um, yeah, let's move on to Fusion Uprising, because this was a game that we picked, Joe, and we picked opposite teams. I picked the Uprising, and you picked the winning Philadelphia Fusion. How are you so smart? How are you a god, Joe? How did you know this was gonna happen? You cheated. You Back to the Future did.
Something. Yeah. I mean, we took it to 5 maps. It was
Mm-hmm.
another super cool series. Um, and I pull up the match page here with same thing. Philly taking Ilios at the end of the series, but yeah. I mean, this is again having the chance to play a little bit more of what both teams are comfortable with. I think is good. That makes for a more exciting series. I think Philly taking the edge on these control maps. I mean that was that was basically most of the difference here. I mean, there's lots of back and forth through the whole thing. Some pretty solid defenses. I mean, only 1 point um, scored on Numbani at all. Uh, yeah, it was just it's interesting. But yeah, Philly coming out with the edge here. I think they've obviously they're going to Atlanta here, and so they'll have some difficult matches going into next week. They've actually got their own destiny in their hands at this point as far as stage playoffs go. I was reading a thing, somebody on Reddit did the math. If they 4-0 Washington and Shanghai, um, then they're guaranteed a spot, and then it depends. If Shanghai loses, then it gets a little easier for them. But they've definitely got an uphill road for basically the last spot uh, of the stage playoffs. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that falls out next week for them.
Yeah, lots of 5-2ers in the stage playoffs here. Hoping the Gladiators can make it. It's a long shot, but uh, possible still. They're not eliminated yet. But yeah, Philadelphia Fusion. I mean, and don't look now, Joe, but Philadelphia Fusion, like I've been saying throughout this show, as long as they're staying in a spot to make that wild card playoffs, they should be fine. Especially with this 2-2-2 lock coming now. Uh, don't look now, but they're still in seventh. They despite having a pretty mediocre season in comparison to last year, and people not being hot on them in the power rankings at all, they're still 11-8, and they're still in seventh place overall. So they are sitting pretty, in my opinion. Next stage, their schedule gets a little bit harder. They face Seoul, they face Vancouver. They got like Outlaws, they got Chengdu. So they've got a tough stage four, but with 2-2-2 lock, that is exactly what the Philadelphia Fusion want. It's just like the London Spitfire. We all know that. So they're excited. And they're in a position, Joe, where they can easily sneak into the playoffs, especially with the meta changed in their favor, in my opinion. So that's pretty good for them. On the other side, Boston. Did you see these articles and rumors about how the environment is bad there, Joe? With
Um,
aim
I
aim
mean,
God.
I feel like without even seeing them, I probably have seen them, but no, I haven't seen these specific ones you're talking about.
AimGod and Kelix. So apparently, it was revealed why AimGod and Kelix were both being benched, and their support line was changing all stage to different iterations. Uh, Apparently, AimGod and Kelix said that they did not want to play together in the starting lineup anymore. So apparently, they are having a little bit of a feud. Um, People have speculated. They said they like looked at Boston Uprising's recent five map victory last week. I can't remember who was it against. Paris maybe. I can't remember. But apparently Kellick's name got hugged, so everyone was like, "Oh, maybe they fixed it. Maybe they're friends again." Um, but yeah, they're in the starting lineup again. So that apparently there's something bad happened over there. Boston's overall standings are sitting like 15th, 8 and 13. They've definitely been on the downward trend, downward spiral as of late. So they could still possibly make it into that wild card playoffs. They're gonna have to have a good stage forward to do it. But overall, Boston not looking too good. Uh, um, what else should we talk about, Joe? What
Let's see.
else?
From this
I
past
mean, we
week.
we had the match of the week, which was the Titans stomping the Gladiators, and I don't take that lightly. Just because it was 4-0, I'm not just saying it was a stomping just because it was 4-0. They stomped them on every single map, and they finally adapted to the Sombra meta, Joe. They put
Yeah,
Stitch in there, and
secret
they
weapon.
gave him Sombra, and they looked fantastic. Um, and I think the most impressive part of this match was Horizon, where they just brought out a complete a complete quick play composition on Horizon Lunar Colony offense, um, and just rolled through the Los Angeles Gladiators. And they mentioned it on the cast too. Like usually people will run a cheesy comp like that on the first point and then switch off. They didn't even do that, and they just rolled them, Joe.
Yeah, it was
Um,
like 5 DPS or something crazy like that, including Reaper, which was interesting.
yeah, yeah, they had I think Soman Su was on the Reaper,
Yeah,
and the Reaper was probably the best part of that composition, especially against the Bash and all these all the classic bunker comp gladiators runs. But they were finally able to figure that out, and I think everyone's talking about Vancouver, San Francisco unable to figure out the meta, all this stuff, and Vancouver just immediately shut them up, Joe. Just immediately
yeah,
said, "Oh, we can easily change the meta going forward, um, because 2-2-2's coming up. Everyone knows Vancouver as the goats comp. I mean, this week sort of proves something that they can easily change within the meta. Do you think they fall at all from grace if 2-2-2 comes, Joe?
yeah. I don't think it's going to be certainly a very hard transition for them. I think that's fair to say. I mean, even looking at this same roster as a runaway, in the most recent contender season they competed in, there was uh, not not incredibly like. Um, the Overwatch League season now that they've played, and yeah, having similar results, um, until their loss to the Valiant, not having suffered like a regular season loss in like a year and a half or something, uh, including as a runaway, that it's yeah, being able to play some of these DPS heroes. I mean, Somin Su, I believe plays Hitscan, primarily, but uh, and it's stuff like that. But Bumpers Winston is just as good as his Ryan. The stuff like that. That's the kind of freedom that they still have. That might be a little rusty or something, but you take the stage break and you prepare for that. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be super hard for Vancouver to pop up back. Well, you know, I don't even know if they're gonna pop down.
Yeah. They popped down for like once, just that match against the Valiant, where they were not running Sombra. The only reason they lost was because they weren't running Sombra and they didn't know how to run Sombra yet.
Yeah.
And they quickly learned that. Clearly, very quickly learned how to do that. Um, just destroying the gladiators at Sombra Goats. And right after this week, I mean, after this match as a Gladiators fan, I was just like, oh my god, the Titans. I think the Titans easily win Stage 3 playoffs because they look really good on Sombra Goats too. Um, they're just the most talented team. They're so good. Um, I could easily see them winning the whole thing, even if there is a 2-2-2 lock. I mean, we saw them on DPS. They're fantastic.
It's true.
But yeah, any other games you want to talk about, Joe, before we quickly go over the standings?
Yeah, I don't think games specifically.
I also should mention my MVP,
Oh yeah.
who I kind of regret not giving this guy MVP last week. So that's one of the reasons why. But Shax is, I mean, just fantastic coming up for the LA Valiant on that Sombra and doing fantastic at it. And I definitely think he's been underlooked, especially with how good Kareev and Fact Fiction are doing as well around him. Um, so I just want to give a shout out to Shax. He had another fantastic week this week as well as last week, even though they weren't able to win both matches this time around. He still looked really good while playing. He even got to, I can't remember what what hero he was playing, but he was playing a DPS hero and he looked super well. Or he was playing Widow and he looked super great on the Widow as well, against Hangzhou at least. And I mean, this guy, I think he's got a bright future in 222 here. He looked really good this week, so that's my MVP. But yeah, let's go over the standings, Joe. Let's
Let's
do
do it.
stage 3 standings. I mean, you have a bunch of people who have clinched, but number one spot right now is New York Excelsior at 5-0. They have a chance to get a quick 7-0, and with their matchups, it's looking likely uh, that they grab this undefeated stage here. They haven't clinched yet, Joe. They have yet to clinch.
Yeah,
So
I think just because they haven't played enough
yeah,
matches. Well, yeah,
yeah,
because I mean, yeah, because the teams that haven't that don't have their fate determined already, there's number one, they're all well except for the Gladiators, they're all playing in Atlanta. We've got New York, Shanghai, Philly Gladiators, and Guangzhou Charge. Because yeah, the Gladiators just depends on lots of these other teams. Like Guangzhou has to get two upset wins in Atlanta in order for well, I guess the upset over Shanghai would be the important one. In order for the Gladiators to still have a chance, New York would have to lose twice to throw stuff into confusion because we've got already 4, 5, and 2 teams. There could be 5 or 6 by the time we're done um,
yeah.
with this week.
Um, Yeah, if NOXL not making it like requires Shanghai to go 1-1, Fusion to go 2-0, and have a really good map differential while doing so.
Yeah,
And NYXL is gonna have to get like 4-0'd both times. Like it's just ridiculous. Like NYXL's in the stage playoffs, and they're facing super easy teams.
it's true. Yeah, they're playing like Florida and
So
DC or Florida and Toronto.
Yeah. So NYXL's in the stage playoffs. Titans 6-1 and Sparks 6-1, and they both have a +14 map differential. Um, but I believe that the Titans beat the Spark. Yeah, the Titans beat the Spark this stage, so that's why they have clinched the Pacific Division and that number 2 seed, despite them being tied on all the stat lines. And then you got Dragons at 4-1, like we mentioned, they're playing this weekend, so they've got some matches to play still. Shock, Dynasty, Valiant, all at and Outlaws all at 5-2 to round it up in that order, and that's all based off map differential. With Shock at +15, which is actually the best map differential out of anyone in this stage, despite them being in fifth. And then on the edge, you got Fusion at 3-2, and Gladiators at 4-3. Gladiators do not play this weekend, so they're just gonna sit and watch and maybe possibly make it, but probably not.
Yeah, super
Uh,
not likely.
yeah, I think they need Shanghai to lose both of their games for that to happen. Um, otherwise everyone will be 5-2 in the playoffs. So they definitely need Shanghai to be 4-3 at the end for that to happen. So probably not going to happen. Um, but yeah, you also have Guangzhou Charge, like you mentioned, in 14th, at 2-3. They still have a chance just because of how little they've played. But you have Eternal, Hunter, Spitfire all at 3-4. They're in 11th through 13th, and then just teams that had awful stages. Three teams with only one win so far. Mayhem, they have 2 games left. You have Boston and Fuel, especially Fuel. Seeing them near the bottom is not good. 0-5 for Marine and Defiant and Justice so far. They still have two games to play. We'll see if any of them can avoid the 07. Of course, someone is going to avoid the 07 between the Rain and Defiant because they play each other. So
It's true.
that would make it a more exciting match. Is that their first match? No. Yeah, that
Yeah,
is their
it's
first
Saturday.
match. So that stinks. That would have made it exciting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean overall in the overall standings too, you got Vancouver and NYXL still leading their divisions. San Francisco, Hangzhou, Gladiators, and Dragons all in spots to make the playoffs. And then in the wild card spots, you got Fusion, then Seoul, then Spitfire, then Dallas, then the Chengdu Hunters, then the Los Angeles Valiant. You got Houston Outlaws, Paris Eternal, Boston Uprising, all with the same record as the Valiant, though. So they're all there on the edge, teetering, um, almost in that wild card spot. So we'll be looking more at the overall standings when it comes to next stage. It'll be. I'm so excited for that wild card playoff, though. Um, it really it's really going to be a good one. Let's
Yeah.
move on to news, Joe.
It's
There,
what he could comment one more thing about it's interesting this Atlanta week we got next week. We have the bottom 5 teams in the season standings currently. And
nice,
also 2, 6, and 7.
nice.
Out of 20 teams are the ones going to Atlanta.
So it's going to be a good weekend, is what you're telling
Something like that, yeah.
me. uh, yeah, we got a bunch of bottom teams. I mean, it makes the next rivalry weekend makes up for it, to be
It's true.
certain, Joe.
It's true.
Um, so I mean, it's still exciting. At least it's still exciting to like be in a new place and see a crowd and stuff like that. But yeah, besides that, nothing too exciting this weekend. But yeah, news. There was a PTR patch, and there's almost nothing on it. But what is there on it, Joe? Patchman.
Yeah, almost nothing because no balance changes at all.
Yep.
Uh, but we do have subtitles, which is a thing now, which is cool for players that are deaf or hard of hearing or who enjoy reading closed captions, according to the comments here. You can get subtitling for critical gameplay and conversations, and everything. I don't know what the difference is between the last two, but yeah, so there's subtitles for voice lines and for ultimate lines and for like ability cues, that sort of thing. I assume for things like the payload dude, on Hollywood, for example, if you that probably counts under everything, is you can
Yeah.
turn him off. Uh, but yeah, that's cool. I think somebody on Reddit, without or within the first couple of days after this patch was saying, "Oh, it's a nerf to Sombra because you can see Sombra's decloaking voice line even if you can't hear it." But I mean, my sort of response to that is if you're a Zenyatta who's reactively pressing Q when you see the voice line of Sombra decloaking just anywhere at all, I think that's on you.
Yeah.
Uh, but then, yeah, a bunch of other bug fixes for the workshop. I think a few new features um, for the workshop, which is nice. Bug fixes for heroes, general skin stuff. Then there was the second patch a couple days later with more bug fixes, so that's cool. Um, Including one you might have seen again on Reddit with Defense Matrix that it was acting weird around corners. Supposedly that's fixed now. The amplification matrix ought to now properly fix or boost healing. Um, yeah, fun stuff like that. A
Absolutely
bug
fun.
that made it possible to use Molten Core and Hammer at the same time, because apparently that was the
Wow.
thing, and that was too OP, so they fixed it.
Way too OP. That is so OP. Gotta nerf that. Yeah, that's. I mean, you'd hope for some balance changes sometime soon, or maybe a 2-2-2 lock in not only Overwatch League but the actual game. Hmm?
I mean, you sort of
Um,
gotta assume that at this point.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's coming in this patch. I mean, there's got to be something big, right? If there is absolutely nothing but subtitles in this PTR patch, like you got to put something else in it, right? You can't just have this simple. If this was the only thing that was on the PTR, it would already be live. If you ask me, um,
Yeah.
that they would just move it to live. It's not. It's like nothing big. So there's got to be something else coming. Owl season roster lock is in 5 days, July 7th. Joe, do you think? I just have one question for you to relate to this. Who do you think needs to make a move the most? Is it a team at the bottom? I feel like the teams that need to make the moves the most are the teams just on the cusp. Uh, which one
Yeah,
of those do you think
I
needs to
mean,
make a move?
Philly comes to mind immediately. Um, as again a Philly fan, with this roster that's fine, but also I mean we're sitting at 7 players, notably one of whom who hasn't played. Uh, of course, Fraggy there on the main tank, but if they want any kind of flexibility in the late season, in the postseason, I think it's something to think about, especially when your two-way players with Fusion University are in Korea currently, competing in contenders. Um, I don't know. Yeah, they were the ones who came to mind immediately.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Soul Dynasty just losing Fissure, and I think they just need one more piece to maybe just push them over the edge into sort of top tier territory. Right now they're sitting at eighth overall, so obviously they're one of the better teams. But I think they want to become one of the best teams, and I think they still need some more pieces to do that.
I wonder
Whether
who
that's
you
like,
add,
yeah, that's a good question.
or
I
or like
mean,
what role even.
I mean, I do like Marvel. I think he's a good main tank, but I think you could get a better main tank than Marvel. Um,
Somebody, well, yeah, I always just talk about somebody on Reddit, but I do read lots of things on Reddit. But somebody suggested Kaiser, talking about bringing in old names,
yeah,
bringing in old
yeah,
names and showing them off on Soul for the Overwatch League. But that'd be cool to see Kaiser play. And then of course they were worried about the fate of of the main tank players from Seoul.
yeah.
Whether it was Miro or Fisher or now maybe Kaiser having to retire after that, but that'd be
Oh
cool.
God. Yeah, it would be awesome to see Kaiser back. Kaiser is definitely one of my favorite players pre Overwatch League in Overwatch. He's super exciting to watch. It'd be awesome to see him back, and he's still doing well over in Korean Contenders, especially lately. So, and I still follow him on Twitter, and he's hilarious on Twitter. So bring him. Someone needs to bring this man in. I'll tell you what. I think some teams could definitely use him. Um, do I don't know if you would even start over Marvel quite yet, though. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what moves these people make. I mean, we could talk about picking up players from contenders all day, but you could also try to grab somebody from someone's bench, or grab a really good player from a bad team, um, that's sort of out of playoff contention, or doesn't want that, would rather have money at this point than one of these really good players. I mean, that's another option for these teams that sort of just want that extra push. But yeah, let's speaking of Fissure and Soul, he retired. Just did not want to play anymore. Sort of burnt out here. But the good thing that came out of this retirement, Joe, is he immediately became an Overwatch journalist slash leaker. Went on his stream, said, "Oh yeah, there's now that I'm not in the league anymore, I can't get in trouble for this when you definitely still can." Um, and he might get in trouble for it because he definitely signed an NDA, and he definitely, I definitely think that even though he retired, I think that doesn't matter. But he basically just came out on stream and said, "Yep, 222 is happening in stage four," which is fantastic for us now, Joe, because we get to talk about 222 and how it's happening. But let's talk immediate reactions, Joe. A lot of people, they're upset that this is happening so late in the season. Such a Because this is such a change to the fundamental game of Overwatch in the middle of a season that has been almost the opposite of 222. There's going to be a lot of changes in the standings because of it. Um, I just want to know your thoughts, Joe. What do you think? Are you upset about that? Do you think it's a well needed change? Where are you on the topic?
Yeah, I think the idea is good, and um, in the sense that the idea of changing the game to move away from goats is good. We'll start with that first. Should that have been done via a balance patch rather than a composition, a forced composition lock? Yes, absolutely. That should have been. I mean, there was the quote unquote goats killing patch that didn't really do that. I think trying to do another one like that, hopefully more successfully, is definitely the way you'd want to go, ideally. Um, because basically what like you mentioned, what the 222 lock is doing is just changing, like actually changing the rules of the game. Sometimes when I explain esports to people, it's like, I say, it's like basketball or football or something, but occasionally they can, change the rules to try to make it more fair, whatever, because it's, um, because like the interactions between heroes and stuff are more complicated. But no, this is actually literally changing the rules of the game, in a way that we haven't seen in something like a balance patch. And I think um, that's super drastic, and I imagine they, in general, would want to avoid that. So it's telling that that's what they're going for here. But then also the timing is the other thing. Yeah, I think trying to do it before stage four and then presumably the playoffs, I think is like one of the worst times to do it, honestly. Again, because it is such a big change, and because it has the potential to, really change up, what teams have been good and that sort of thing. I mean, even if you put it in mid-season, like if you put it in for stage three, like it was rumored, I mean that's a little bit better. If you wait for the playoffs, then you risk playoff syndrome like we got with Philly and London last year. But so yes, I think a change was needed. Granted, there's sort of been a little bit of experimenting with change already, this stage. But that these teams could have known ahead of time and probably did know um, for a good deal ahead of time that this 222 is coming. So this could be almost a meta shift by some of these teams, into more Sombra based compositions, in response to this news. Um, but yeah, so I think yes, a change from Ghost was necessary. Um, I I would rather they didn't do it in such a sweeping way, and if they had to do it in such a sweeping way, this was like the worst possible time to pick. That being said, though, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to watch, and there's gonna be lots of changes and lots of things to talk about, and lots of like even new things to consider. Again, based on these restrictions, I mean, so that's something at least. Because I mean,
I,
uh,
yeah,
I can envision stage four being our first stage like ever with Brig. It's like 0% pick rate. I can
yeah,
absolutely see that happening.
yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
you've said, Monty has said, like Brig is not good if she is only one of two supports. So I agree with you. I doubt we see her played. But yeah, as far as my vision of like a perfect Overwatch League season meta is, this isn't a world where we don't have a meta that's like as bad as goats. I think goats. I personally enjoy goats. I totally see why they're doing this because the viewership is just dipping. And you'll see, I mean, there are still fans there. You'll see, like, during big games, like when Valiant upset Vancouver, like, the viewership immediately was going during that match, went back up to like 130,000. Like, there are people who are willing to watch it and want to watch it when it's a big match like that. But I think there are a bunch of viewers who are like, I just want to see DPS because a majority of the players in the Overwatch player base want to play DPS and they like playing DPS and they want to see it. That they want to learn from it. So it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense that they're doing it. Viewership is going down. It's a young league. They don't want people to just quit the league, quit watching the league forever just because this year was awful. Because this is one of the first seasons you have to give a good impression, obviously. I think they're kind of in panic mode and they're doing it because of that. But back to my perfect vision of Overwatch League is a league sort of where we have one meta for two stages, and then we change things up for the second half of the season. I don't think my perfect one is we have a meta that's enjoyable and ever growing throughout the entire season because I it feels so cheap when things get changed and then all of a sudden, especially last year. I mean, last year was the worst. I think the worst timing could have been going into the playoffs, Joe, instead of instead of going into stage 4. At least we have a full stage. I mean, last year the meta changed literally right before playoffs, and all of a sudden the seeding didn't matter because here are the Philadelphia Fusion and London Spitfire who were absolutely fantastic in that last meta there in the playoffs, and that's the reason why they made the championship. And that feels cheap, and that feels weird to me that all of a sudden these two teams who were like middle of the pack, literally, because there were 12 teams at 5 and 6, are all of a sudden like these insane, powerful teams just because the developers just changed the game all of a sudden. It feels cheap to me. I don't like it. I don't like it. I like rewarding teams who have been dominating all season, like Shock Titans, and then also rewarding teams who are able to change the meta up, like it's happening right now with Sombra GOATs and LA Valiant and all these teams who have been able to finally overthrow them by sort of changing things up, switching things up, and evolving the meta. Um, but in the end, absolutely screw goats, and this was the best way to do it in my opinion. Was a 2-2-2 lock. So it's a tough topic to talk about, and meta changes is a tough topic to talk about. But yeah, we're gonna be seeing some new teams on top here, Joe. I really think we will.
I'd be surprised if we didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, which is sad because it just feels like it's gonna feel like a completely different season all of a sudden, and we're just like, oh, these teams are good now, and these teams aren't as good now, and what's happening? I do like to see it just naturally evolve, like it is now. I think this is a perfect example this stage, but you could maybe blame that sort of on people finding out the 222 lock's going to happen, so a lot of teams deciding to roll with different compositions here. So yeah. Anything else to talk about 222 wise, Joe?
I mean, I'm sure we'll be talking about it a lot. uh,
Yeah.
Going into, I mean, you were talking before the show at some point, during the mid-stage break, we'll do a whole thing where we'll go through all the teams and try to figure out who wins and who loses with these changes. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I kind of want our power rankings to be reflective of like mostly stage 3, and then we can have like a full 222 episode where we're like, okay, but here's maybe what I think's gonna change up in stage 4 now that we're gonna have a 222 lock. I just want to like go over who's gonna be good, who's not,
oh yeah.
sort of, because that's a big change. Um, but yeah, let's move on to our next piece of news. Toronto has signed Logic's Mangachu. We mentioned it earlier in the show. Obviously, a lot of changes happening at once. Joe even compared it to the Florida Mayhem earlier. But overall, in the future, how do you? Let's talk near future first. Do you think this propels them to the wild card at all, Joe? And then tell me, like next season going in, is this a better roster overall, and do you like the changes?
Well, I mean, so I've sort of already said, that I like the initiative at least, from Toronto to make the changes again. Hopefully, it's actually successful, but I think it definitely has the potential to be. I mean, we've seen how good Logix is, we've seen how good Mangachu is, good solid picks, and again with some of their with their tank duo. Also, they got from Montreal Rebellion. Apparently, that's where Logix was before. Uh, was also Montreal Rebellion. So using their own talent, that's awesome. And promoting these people specifically, that's cool. Um, like looking ahead to stage 4, they're gonna have a relatively easy stage 4. Kind of. I mean, in that they play Washington and Florida twice. I mean, you can't ask for much better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, as far as let's see, where are they on the season standings? I mean, near the bottom, we said bottom 5, but yeah, to get from 17th to 12th, I mean, right now that's only a difference of one win. So I suppose it's possible they're gonna have to have a similar stage to stage 1, though. You know, 4 and 3, 5 and 2. Maybe sneak in the bottom there, but beyond that, I think that's about, you know, the extent of your really good hopes for Toronto uh, for this season. But yeah, next season, I mean, if they can get a super you know, good amount of consistency with this roster, because again, there's been lots of changes, you know, throughout the season on Toronto. Unlike, for example, a team like New York last season with I seem to recall didn't change really much at all. Um, I think that'll help, you know, pull them together even more as we go.
Yeah, two super talented players. I think great for the future. With that easy stage 4 though, that might be an easy way into this wild card. Do I think they're gonna make it through the wild card tournament into the top 8? No, I don't think they're good enough. But it's possible for them to make the wild card for sure. But I do like these changes. And the Jonak skin has been released. And it's 200 tokens. It's only available till July 14th. So if you want that beautiful octopus Jonak MVP skin, you better go grab it. You got about 2 weeks here. So and only 200 tokens too. Um, I've definitely accumulated 200 tokens at this point through watching, so I'll use that. Um, let's talk Atlanta homestand, Joe. Exciting. This is our second homestand ever for Overwatch League. The second home game. I wonder if they'll say the second home game as they're like Dallas was like, this is the first home game. Will Atlanta be like the second home game?
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be kind of weird.
Yeah. Um, the match of the week is Toronto Atlanta. So is that officially the match of the week? Are they calling it that?
Yeah, yeah. I looked back at the article.
And it is on ABC, so that's cool. Um, it's on national television. So hopefully it's. I think this will be the first match that isn't a 4-0, Joe. First match of the week that
Oh
isn't
yeah,
a 4-0. I think these two teams are pretty good. But let's go into picking our matches. Last week we both got three right. We both went 3-1.
yep.
So I'm still beating you by
Four.
four.
Yep.
Okay. So Joe's still got to come back here.
And we've got some easy ones this week, but that's only because I guess we have just the one easy one, I guess, that's like super easy, or maybe two, but uh, only because we want to try to get one for each of the eight teams that's going to Atlanta. So that's what that's about.
Yeah. And the eight teams, like Joe mentioned earlier, are most of them aren't good. But we do have one really good team there, and that's the New York Excelsior. They faced Florida Mayhem in the first match. Uh, New York's gonna win, Joe. That's my prediction. What do
I
you
don't.
predict, Florida? Because
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know. It's a pretty hot take. I mean, yeah, there's not much else we can say about that. Yeah, definitely given that one to New York in that matchup.
yes. Oh, speaking of, we should mention the times because it is much earlier than Overwatch League usually is.
It's true.
It's at 8:30 Pacific,
On
8:30
Saturday,
a.m. Yeah, a.m. on Saturday and 11:30 Eastern. So a little bit earlier than usual for sure.
and then half an hour later on Sunday, noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
Yeah, I think the Europeans are gonna like that a lot. um, that's for sure. This is a very Euro friendly
That's true.
schedule here.
Because then it's like early or late afternoon for them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's like late. Yeah, I think it's late afternoon and into the night. But yeah, then so what's the next match we're picking? The match of the week, Toronto Atlanta. So
Yeah.
this one's a tough one.
Yeah, this is like
But
an actually close match.
yeah, both teams 0-5. We better hope we don't have the same pick here. Um, both teams 0-5 this stage so far, having terrible stages, not looking good at all lately. Um, ah, who is gonna? I'm gonna go. Ooh, I'm gonna go Atlanta. No, I'm gonna go Toronto. Despite Atlanta being at home, this one's so hard. I just keep going back and forth. Despite Atlanta being at home, I do like Toronto's roster changes lately, and I do think they have a better roster now, even though they might not be synergized fully quite yet. I still like Toronto a little bit better, and my main man, Gods. I'm gonna go Toronto on this one, Joe.
Okay, so yeah, so that is a hot take. Um,
Yeah,
unlike the other one.
yeah,
Yeah, because I think for me it's gonna be really hard to bet against Atlanta at home. Uh, the Atlanta at home, and then sort of before the show, I was it's kind of sad that this is where we are, but I was looking through their losses and comparing their losses this stage, because again, both teams 0-5. I mean, Atlanta's the team that's lost to San Francisco in 5 maps, to Shanghai in 5 maps, to Philly in 5 maps. I mean, it's close. I mean, that's about all you can say positively for this team this stage. But yeah, being on a home stage and with an opponent that's more appropriate to where they are, I think it'll be decently close, I think. But like 3-1 or 3-2 maybe. But yeah, I'm giving it to Atlanta this one.
all right, makes sense. Um, Next day, the first match, Philadelphia Fusion versus Shanghai Dragons. This should be another good one. Between two teams still fighting. I mean, Shanghai basically just has to win one game this weekend to clinch. I feel like, but Shanghai looking obviously amazing. Philadelphia Fusion want to squeeze into that stage playoffs again, make it back in there. Um, but I'm gonna go Shanghai here. I think they're a much better team than Philadelphia, and this should be an easy one for them.
Let's see. Where'd he go? There we go. Okay. Yeah. So I am also going Shanghai here. I think. I think they are going to get the win. I think would it be cool if, like I said, I think Philly needs two 4-0s to like guarantee a playoff spot. And would it be cool if that happens? Absolutely. But I'm not convinced that it will. Um, even if people drive down from Pennsylvania to Georgia, it's it's not going to help so much.
Yeah,
I think against the Shanghai squad, this looked really nice this stage.
yeah. Um, Shanghai, too good. Next game, Washington Justice, Guangzhou Charge, which the lovely viewers of ESPN2 get to see a fantastic matchup, right, Joe?
Oh yeah,
Two great teams.
best match of the week.
Yeah, Guangzhou Charge is going to win. Uh, Easy. Joe.
I mean, pretty much. Yeah, this is like I said, it's some of them were easier this week, but yeah, this is you gotta go to give it to Guangzhou. I mean, this is the Washington Justice with what, one win or two wins all stage, all 2 wins all season.
Yep.
Um, yeah, not really much you can say about that.
Nope. And overall, the Atlantic is awful. If you look at like the overall standings right now, out of the top 12 teams right now, there are three teams from the Atlantic: Fusion, Spitfire, Excelsior. Out of the top 12 teams, Joe.
Yeah. Well, and last season it was the opposite. The
Yeah,
Atlantic was just dominating. But
yeah, yeah. That's weird. That's correct. 9 of the 12 teams currently that would be competing for playoff spots are Pacific teams. That's crazy. That's you only you only have one team in the Pacific that is currently in that bottom of the standings, and that's Guangzhou Charge. So um, they're not even they could easily just all of a sudden be top 12 because they're 7-12 as well. So um, Pacific, good division. But yeah, that's what we're gonna end the show on here. Social media wise, if you want to follow our personal Twitters, mine is at JWGeorgeIV. Joe's is at Kirkpatrick_Inc. That's INC. We have a show Twitter at On the Flank Show. You can go see Joe's fantastic graphics on there. We got our picks every week, our MVPs every week, all that stuff. Our email is ontheflankshow@gmail.com. Email us any topic you'd like us to talk about. You can also tweet at us if you'd like. You're listening to this in one way. If you'd like to listen to it in a different way, we're at ontheflank.podbean.com on your internet browser. We're also on YouTube, my YouTube channel. It's John George. Best way to find it's via my Twitter. We're on iTunes. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. And we are on Google Play. Have a nice week and enjoy that Atlanta homestand.